gesels met Amerikaanse skrywer Douglas Ruskoff. Hy het nog altyd baie interessante sienings gehad oor die toekoms van die digitale ontwikkeling en die impak daarvan op die ekonomie. Ons het begin deur vir hom te vra om vir ons sy agtergrond in 'n neutedop op te som.
My name's Douglas Ruskoff, and I write books about media, technology, culture, and society. I'm a professor at City University of New York, where I teach about media activism and how the internet has really changed the political economy, sometimes for the better, but right now mostly for the worst, and what we can really do to reclaim our ability to create and exchange value with one another. I've written a number of books about the internet and digital culture, and my first book on the internet, it was called Cyberia, Cyberia. I wrote it in 1991, and the publisher canceled it, actually, in 1992 because they thought the net would be over by 1993 when the book would have come out. So it's been a long, hard struggle to get people to see the future and kind of where things are going. And I mean, luckily, I've been right enough times for people to now kind of pay attention when I tell them where things are going. I have the freedom or the distance sometimes to see that because I'm not in internet business myself. So I've just written a book called Throwing Rocks at the Google Bus, which really looks at the unequal distribution of assets in the digital age, and why we have to do something about it or risk a real economic crisis.
Baie interessant. Nou die moderne advies vir 'n loopbaan wat goeie geld kan genereer is gereeld just learn how to code. En om toepassingswebtuistes of rekenaarprogramme te kan skryf, klink soos 'n volhoubare loopbaanopsie of hoe. Ek het ook vir Douglas vir sy opinie gevra.
We'll be changing our coding languages, eventually. I'm one of the people who believes that the majority of coding will be done by people who don't know code as we currently think of it. They'll have various, algorithms and interfaces that help them. So just as, Adobe Photoshop lets people who don't know how to use a darkroom work on photos, or WordPress lets people who don't know how to build websites create websites, I think the majority of programming out there will not be genuinely novel programming solutions to problems, but a whole lot of programs written by people who aren't genuine coders. So that this one moment that we're in right now, where we don't have enough coders to use the current languages to solve all of our problems, is a temporary one.
Ek het ook vir Douglas gevra wat ter impak die huidige intensiewe digitale ontwikkeling moontlik op die wêreldekonomie kan hê.
You could look at that, what has the effect of technology been on the global economy since the beginning? And really, since the beginning of the industrial age, the main role of technology has been to really to give people who have capital more power over people that don't. The more technology you have, the less dependent you are on workers for their skills. So when you have a factory or an assembly line to build a product, now you don't need skilled craftsmen to build the thing. You can, hire someone and train them in 15 minutes to do the one little part of the assembly that they need to know. That was great for management, great for the owners of businesses, great for capitalists, but really bad for workers. So now the impact on workers and the economy is similar, where we use digital technology and robots and algorithms to replace human workers and to use technologies instead. So we end up really enhancing the value of capital, of the venture capitalists who put the money in to build the robots or or program the algorithms, but we end up taking power and money away from all those people who used to have jobs. So the long-term effect will either be the utter disenfranchisement of labor from the economy, increasing unemployment and poverty, or we will begin to establish things like a guaranteed minimum income, where we let people participate in the abundance that our technologies are creating, even if they don't have a job. We'll realize that a job really can't just be a job really should be because there's work that we need to get done. So we have the person employed doing that work. The idea that we need to have a job in order to share in the bounty that our technologies are creating for us is the part that we have to change.
Indien jy sopas by ons aangesluit het, ons het vroeër met die Amerikaanse skrywer Douglas Ruskoff gesels. Hy het nog altyd baie interessante sienings gehad oor die toekoms van digitale ontwikkeling en die impak daarvan op die ekonomie, en ons het by hom uitgevind wat die moontlike oplossings is.
Well, there is no middle class. The digital technologies tend to exacerbate the problem that was built into corporate capitalism to begin with. The reason we have the kind of money we do, which is a debt-based currency, the reason we have the corporate law that we do, which is essentially a mandated monopoly for a few companies, the reason we have that is because way back at the dawn of the industrial age, the very wealthy people were being threatened by the rise of the middle class. If you look at the history, the corporation and central currency were invented specifically to push back down the middle class, which was threatening to unseat the aristocracy. And it worked pretty well and in a slightly stable way for 500 or 600 years. But once we employ those same techniques to push people down and to create a very small, ultra-wealthy class, once we start operating those same programs now on digital technology, it's like pumping steroids into those effects. It accelerates them really fast. So what used to just be a nice division of classes becomes an extreme division of classes. So we have 47 people own half the world's wealth. That's extreme, and that's partly because we have all of this, these financial instruments that are spinning out of control on digital technologies. So we don't have a middle class. We have a winner-takes-all landscape. And even though it seems as if people have more access, so, anybody can make a song and post it on iTunes, many, many fewer people actually make any money doing this. We have, fewer very, very popular musicians and a whole bunch of musicians that sell one record each. So we have that's called the power law dynamic. And power law dynamics really tend to happen more on digital platforms where there's lots of feedback loops. So whoever's on the top 10 list gets seen by everybody who goes online, and then those same top 10 records are purchased again and again and again. So there's not a full ecosystem through which people can make discoveries of other things, or where other kinds of loops can be reinforced. So these same effects, they happen everywhere, where there's one Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos, that's the owners of Facebook and Amazon, and they end up with all the money that might have been shared at one time by thousands of bookstore owners or thousands of telephone yellow page directory makers.
Ons het vroeër met die Amerikaanse skrywer Douglas Ruskoff gesels oor die toekoms van digitale ontwikkeling en die impak daarvan op die ekonomie, en hy het 'n paar moontlike oplossings ook met ons gedeel.
Well, the easiest solutions are, I write a lot about them in my book, and I'm apologizing for this in advance. I was hoping there could be a tweet long solution, that I could say it in 20 words, or that there's an instant update for your iPhone that just changes you to the right kind of business or the right kind of economy. But it took us 600 years to get into this. So I am asking people to spend 4 or 5 hours of their time to fully absorb how to completely change the economic landscape. That's not, in today's world, I understand that's a lot to ask, but it shouldn't be. If we're going to actually take back the economy, take a day. Take a day to figure it out. And I've laid it out, but it takes a day to absorb fully. What I'm asking people to do in shorthand would be look at how, if you have a business, look at how your business can make other people rich rather than just extract money from the economy. So I would ask, the people who are running a company like Uber, which is a taxi company, how can you actually build a sustainable taxi company rather than just using the taxi industry to develop a monopoly that you then leverage to create other monopolies? In other words, a company like Amazon is not looking at how can we create a sustainable book industry. They're looking at how can we bankrupt everybody in the book industry in order to promote our own company and move into other areas. So for big business, it's really a matter of considering whether you want to create a business that actually has revenue, and that sustains itself with revenue rather than just by selling your business or selling your shares to successive rounds of investors, lower and lower on a pyramid. Do you want something that actually circulates value? And for regular people, I would say it's a matter of looking sideways rather than up. It's less about trying to get a job at a big company and more about looking for ways to create value for people that are around you. And that might involve developing local currencies. It might require you to find other ways of exchanging value than getting a borrowed currency from a central bank, because the larger companies will always be able to get that money cheaper than you. So you lose your advantage that way.